Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to look at how we can create a tiny HackerNews clone using Ruby on Rails. So here I have the example running. I have nothing here, which is a clean slate. I can click on submit one and then put in the HackerNews address, put my name in, submit it. You'll see it show up here. I can click upvote, which will upvote the points. What I can also do is I can go to my db seeds file. This basically allows us to create or seed the database with dummy data. And then I'm going to put this in here, save the file. Let's also try and see if it's formatted nicely. Okay, so here we've got 3 entries. I'll make this 100 points to show you it's actually working. I'm going to stop the server here, run the reset command, and the db reset command will automatically, let's see if it's in here somewhere. I don't think it's in here. It isn't, but this command has basically resetted the database and it's run this db/seeds file. It's executed it in the Rails context, which means that we should now have these things populated in our database, and that means this entry will now be gone when I launch the server because we've just wiped the database clean. So if I refresh the page, you'll see indeed that's what happened. We've got our 199 points up there at the very top. So the first thing I'm going to do is start in a brand new empty directory. I'm also going to run this command, which lists the versions and ensures that all of these things are installed in my system. So that includes Ruby, Bundle, SQLite 3 for the database, and Rails. And run that, and if all the version numbers appear, it means we're good to go. Now I'm going to run this command, which basically says, Rails, let's start a new project in the current directory. We can give it some random name. I'll specify my database to be SQLite 3, so I'm not going to use anything fancy like Postgres or MySQL. We're just going to stick with the simple, good old SQLite 3. All these other flags here are just skipping some features that we don't need for this very basic example. We don't need storage, we don't need Docker. I'm just going to run this command, which should create a bunch of files and bootstrap a project in this directory. Now it's done. I will just open readme in this and see. I should also just run my caster start command, which should populate our file explorer. So yeah, this is all the files that have been generated. While we're here, why don't we quickly go through some of the files or folders that were created using that Rails command. So we've got app, which contains all of our app code, which we will explore this folder in detail because this is where we're going to mostly put our code in. We've also got bin, which is all the binaries. So here, Rail, for example, I misspoke. This isn't really a binary. It's a file with a shebang that executes Ruby. So the Ruby interpreter will come in this file and look at and execute this as Ruby code, and you can see we're already requiring relative config boot, which is config, in config, and boot. So this is just calling in bundler setup, which sets up the gems, and then we've got bootsnap for caching. It caches Ruby bytecode so we can start our Rails server faster. And then we've also got db, which has seeds, which I showed you in the start of the video. You can use the seed initial data to the database. We've got liblog public, which serves your public HTML files. Then there's storage, which we're not using, unit tests, integration tests, temporary files and folders. We've got a gem file, which is like package.json. This gem file.lock, package.json.lock. We've got rake file, which is Ruby's task runner. It's kind of like npm scripts. If you have npm run start, you would use rake something, rake start, for example. And then we've also got config.ru. So now would be a good time for me to point out this config.ru folder, or sorry, it's a file. It says it's used by Rack-based servers to start the application, and you can see we're starting a Rails app here. It's very interesting because if you're familiar with the Python ecosystem, we've got Django and Flask. Those are web servers that run on the WSGI standard, and then you serve it behind a production server like gUnicorn. And then the HTTP request hit gUnicorn, it goes through the WSGI interfaces, and then it finally gets to Django or Flask. And we have a similar setup here, but instead we've got Rails in place of Django and Flask. We've got Rack, which is the protocol or an interface, instead of having WSGI. And then we've got Unicorn, and in fact, Unicorn came before gUnicorn. That's where gUnicorn got its name from. I will now go ahead and create a new terminal and run this command bin rails generate model story, with all of these properties. Basically, I'm saying create a database entity called story. We've got a title, which is type string, URL, which is also string, author, which is also string again. We've got points, which is now finally an integer. So as you can see, this is going to be our Hacker News story. Hit run, and we see that a bunch of things has happened. I'll step through them one by one and show you exactly what got created. So the first thing is going to be our model. So if I go to my source code over here, look for app model story.rb, you see that this file is newly created and it's empty. It's just a Ruby class, which is a story, and it inherits from the application record class, which is a Rails concept. So this is what you usually see online as AR. That's application record or active record. And this is where we're going to define our story model in a bit, but I'm going to first go through the other files that were created. So next one is db migrate, and then that's the date or the timestamp underscore create stories. If I open this migration, it's auto-generated. You see that we've got a change function, which is an instruction that create a table called stories. You see that my name here is story with a capital S, but here it converted to lowercase s. This is a Ruby symbol, and it used the Ruby inflector to make it plural. So stories instead of story. That's the name of the table. And then we've got all these fields in the database table, and timestamps here basically create a created at and updated at column or columns in the database. So to show you the Ruby inflector at work, I will go ahead and now generate a second something. For example, let's call this person. We can just get rid of everything here and just say name is a string, and it should say persons. That's my guess on how the inflector should work. So if I came here, let's look at migration. So here we create people. Look at that. So Ruby is kind of English aware. It knows the plural of person is people and not persons. And what else can we check? We can also check the model, right? So if I do app/models, you can see person here is still a singular person. And what I can do now is I can run the db migrate command, which is bin rails db migrate, and this will run all the migrations and create the things in the database. Meaning if I did like db console, so if I did bin/rails db console, this pops me into the SQLite console because we chose SQLite. And I can do .tables. This shows all the tables that exist. You can see this is active record, internal metadata, schema migrations, and we've got people and stories. I can do schema people, and you can see this is the SQL that generates a create table if not exists people. We've got, we should have just the name here, name. You've got updated at and created at. And I can do the same for stories. So schema stories, and you can see stories now has a lot more. It's got the URL, the title, and the author as well. So I'm going to exit out this database console here. What I'm going to do now actually is I will run this command bin/rails, let's see, db migrate status, I believe, and this should query this information. Actually, let's just pop back to db console real quick. db console. So this information comes from the schema migrations table. So let's do select all from schema migrations, and I'm missing a semicolon. So you can see that those are the two migration IDs that show up here. So those two tables are managed by Rails. I can also select all from AR internal metadata, and we see that our environment is development, blah blah blah. And what's cool is that we see that the migration statuses are up for the create stories and create people. The reason why there are two migrations is because if I look at migration here, I see we have two migration files. So I'm going to go ahead and undo the last migration that was done, which is create people, because I didn't need people here. So in order to do that, I'll do migrate db bin rails db migrate down, and then the version here should come from this migration ID. Put that in here. So we are going to revert the create people which is just doing the undo of this. So Rails is smart enough to know when I say create table, the undo or the inverse of this is delete table or drop table. So if I just do the DB console thing again and do dot tables, we should see people disappear. And if I did DB status, like DB migrate status, you'll see that this is down. It's no longer up. And I'm actually also going to just do down again. I could have done this down for version migration ID of create stories, but I can also do DB rollback, which would basically do the same thing. All rollback does is it undoes the last or the latest migration. So I can do migrate status and see that they should both be down. The reason I set this stories to also be down is because I wanted to change some things here in the migration. So this migration was auto-generated, but doesn't mean that we can't change it. There's no reason why we couldn't. So I'm going to go to the title here. I'm going to add null to be false. Null false. This is going to be important for validation later, meaning all these fields will now be required fields. And I'll also add null to be false. So we're basically making this column not nullable. And for the points, I'm also going to give it a default of 1. So if points isn't supplied to us, we'll just assume a default. Let's hit save, and let's do db migrate again. So the migrate command is just binrails db migrate, and we have we created people again. That's not what I wanted. So what I'm going to do is roll back, and we rolled back create people. What I'm going to do now is go and delete this. Remove people. So I'm going to remove the migration to create people. Actually, yeah, I could have also done something else. Let's see here. Destroy. I could have destroyed model people and see if this works. The people, oh, it's recognized as plural. Sorry, this is supposed to be a person, like here, like this. Alrighty. So now if I ran the migrate command again, it shouldn't have done anything, which is correct because it's already created stories, so it doesn't have to create stories again, and people or person is gone now. So to be clear, I actually did not have to run that remove command to manually remove the migration. All I had to do was roll back while the migration file was still there, so that Rails could read the migration file and apply the inverse operations in the database using SQL. And then as soon as I ran the destroy command like this, destroy person, then it would have deleted that migration file here anyway, right? Okay, we've just been talking about the database stuff so far. So that's what this is. It's the database migration that gets converted into SQL. But now I want to talk about the model, the application record called story. So this is a Rails level entity, whereas previously migration was a database level entity. So here what I can do in my story entity or my story AR is I can say validates title, URL, author, and we set presence to true. This is not a Ruby class, but just for those of you who aren't familiar with the syntax, validates here is a method or a function. And me having this here by itself is actually similar to just me wrapping it in parentheses like this. It's just a method call, right? And also, let me just keep the parentheses in for clarity, right? And also here in presence, the first three are positional arguments, and these are all symbols denoted by the leading colon. And presence here, I can surround this with curly braces like that. It's basically a hash or a dictionary. So this is a shorthand. I can omit the curly braces. Yeah, essentially it's the same as me just deleting those parentheses and making it like this. This is Ruby shorthand. The next thing I'll do is I will once again validate. This time I want to have another validation clause on URL. Also, I should probably mention, why are we doing this when we already have null false, which is in the migration, right? We're saying that these fields cannot be null. And the reason is because this is database level protection. If we happen to try and create a story with these fields as null, then we would get a database error, like a SQL like error. But if we had the application record level validation, that means Rails will give a more human-friendly error message, which I can show you later. But for now, I'm just going to do this validation clause for presence true. Here I'm going to do another validation clause, but this time only on the URL field to validate on the format. So this is the option. These are the fields to validate on, targets, and then this is the validation option. So in this case, the URL is the only field. The option is I want to specify the format. And the format here will have a width with a regular expression. So this is how you do regular expressions. You have %r and then curly brace, and then I'll have some message here in case this validation fails. I want to give the user some kind of feedback. So here I'll do backslash a in regular expression means this is the start of the string. So if HTTP wasn't the start of the string, if there was stuff in front of HTTP, for example, invalid HTTP, then this would fail because of the backslash a, right? Okay, so HTTP, and then we can say optionally we want to have an S, that's what the question mark is for, and then we'll say a message must start with HTTP or HTTPS. So there we go. I'm going to save the file. Now would be a good time for me to introduce to you the Rails console. So this running bin/Rails console will pop open an interactive Ruby terminal in which I can do things like put s story.columnnames.inspect, and this gives me the database column names for the story table, the stories table, plural, because that's what's stored to the database via the Ruby inflector. I can also do things like story equals to story.new. And then here you can see I've created an in-memory application record object. This is just like in Ruby's memory. It's not saved to the database yet, because if I did story.valid, you'll see that it's not valid, and I can print the error messages. So errors.full messages, and you'll see that title can be blank, URL can be blank, none of these can be blank, URL is invalid. What I'll do here actually is to prove an earlier point, and I will comment these validates as clauses out. So I'm taking out the directives to tell Rails to validate. So now if I go in console again, and if I set story equals to story.new again, right, that creates an empty story with no titles and etc. Now if I did story.valid, you'll see it's true because Rails doesn't know that this is invalid. But as soon as I try to save this to the database, story.save, boom, all of a sudden we get this SQLite constraint exception, not null, blah, blah, blah. What did I tell you about human-friendly messages, huh? So this is exactly what I would say is not a human-friendly message, whereas with Rails, it gives us a better message. So let me just take out those comments. And then now, I'm not sure if we need to refresh this session. Oh, we do, indeed. We have to restart the console. And then I'm going to do story equals to story.new again. And then we'll say story.url equals to https google.com. Then we'll set the story title Google. And then we'll say story.author equals to Dario. I don't know. Okay, and points here, you see it defaulted to 1, which is great. So if I did story.save now, we see that it returned true, meaning it succeeded. I can now go to SQLite or DB console actually, yeah, DB console, and then I can do dot tables, select all from stories, and we see that we have Google. Okay, so it's super late right now, and I think my housemates are asleep. I don't want to bother them, and also I have work tomorrow. I have to wake early, so I'm going to end this video right here, unfortunately. Sorry for the disappointment, but there will be a part 2.